One, two, three. So okay, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Environmental Implementation Committee, 23rd of May. In relation to apologies, I think we have an apology from Councillor Ware. Thank you, Richard. And I think Councillor Wilson will be leaving early. Is that correct, Kate?
Yes. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully you'll be finished.
And has he put an apology? Councillor Laws has put an apology in. So who do we actually have on Zoom then? Okay.
I'll move.
So we've got a mover. Councillor Wilson, do we have a seconder? Councillor Gretchen. I'll put that motion acceptance of the apologies. Those for? Aye. Against? Carried. There's no public forum today. We have 2 items on the agenda. I assume there's no additional items. Declaration of interest. I think everybody understands the declarations of interest. Matters for consideration. We'll move to a public agenda. Okay. Our first report is the Regional Pest Management Plan, Operational Plan 2024-25. Welcome staff to the front. Libby, Murray. Cool. I'll do a brief intro before we move to staff, but basically this report has been written by Libby and by Murray, and it's been endorsed by Gavin Palmer. The purpose here today is to seek approval of the 2024-25 Biosecurity Operational Plan. The operational plan is required to detail the nature and scope of activities the Council intends to undertake in the annual implementation of the Regional Pest Management Plan. The Biosecurity Operational Plan continues the progress made under previous 3 operational plans, focusing on the following operational areas: continued property inspections on both private and public land to ascertain compliance against pest management rules, to maintain the focus on the 5 regional pest priorities, that's exclusion pests, rabbits, wallabies, mould and conifers, bacillus, and thirdly, to capitalise on business improvement outcomes to enhance the effective delivery of the operational plan. And of course, the proposed 24-25 biosecurity operational plan is attached. I'm going to now invite staff. I see Richard and Libby. Any comments?
So I just want to, before you hand over to Libby and Murray to talk about the paper and the attached plan, just acknowledging the significant amount of feedback we've had through both the hearings and the other submissions around other pests in Otago and the issues that they are causing. Just flagging that this plan is about delivering on our current regional pest management plan. I've had a talk to Libby, and we know that the regional pest management plan is due for review, but it's not for 4 years. We will bring a paper back in the new year outlining options for council to consider around the potential to bring that forward either in full or partially to address some of the concerns you're hearing from the community. It's not part of today's paper, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that we have heard those submissions and that we do intend to give councillors some options around how we might address those. But the paper today is giving effect to the existing pest management plan and the commitments that have been made through that document. So I just wanted to frame that up, and obviously we will still respond to those submissions as well, and then do that through the deliberations process. But it's closely related to the papers today, and obviously it's fresh in our minds after Monday and Tuesday. So that's where just putting that out there now, and something that staff will put into the work plan for next year, and then bring back some options for council to consider. It'll be this calendar year.
Cool. Thank you, Richard. Libby and Murray,
Just a question to that. So you're saying next year, as in the next financial year, and the report will be done within this calendar year? Perfect. Thank you. Good time. Yeah, just not. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question on that as well?
okay.
So I just like to understand when the paper comes back, the site-led programs, and I'm not referring to a new site-led program, but if a current site-led program needed to expand to include a greater area than is identified in the pest management plan, would that require a process of review of the whole pest plan or not? Don't need to answer it today, but it was just a thought in the back of my mind.
I can answer that.
Oh.
It wouldn't require a full review of the pest plan. It could be a partial review, but that paper that we bring, we can delve into that through questions if we don't go into enough detail in the paper. But we wouldn't need to do a full review of the pest plan. We could do a partial review.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Libby.
Thank you. Councillor Scott pretty much said gave a really good overview of the paper, but we just wanted to highlight that this operational plan includes learnings that we've had over the last 3 years. So we're refining in our plans as we go. So this is our most refined one that we've had. At the last Environmental Implementation Committee meeting, we presented a paper around our marine biosecurity program. So this is the only KPI within the operational plan that sits outside of the regional pest management plan, because we don't have anything in our pest plan around marine. So that's the only thing that sits outside. And there was a comparison document also included to show the differences and from the current year's operational plan to the proposed new one, for everyone to see where those changes were included. So we are just happy to answer any questions now that anyone may have about the coming plan for the next financial year.
Cool. Though before we do that, Libby, is there any further outline just in terms of what those learnings, the key learnings might have been over the last 3 years?
I think the major learnings are more around community engagement and working in a quality operation rather than necessarily a quantity operation. So having better engagement with landowners and farmers and community groups, as experienced by what we're doing in the community-led rabbit programs. And I think that's probably the leading lesson from the last year.
Cool. Sorry, did you say, it was more about quality of engagement as opposed to the numbers of engagement?
Yes. That's where we'll see better outcomes is by having more quality engagement with either community or individuals, rather than a really high number of inspections we undertake, but potentially we don't have the capacity or we don't have the capacity to go back and follow those right through to getting a good outcome with individuals. Cool.
And councillors might want to tease that out a little bit further. Kate.
Thank you. Thank you for the copy of the marked up copy. So I'm looking at page 49 of 88, and the marks up on Russell Lukens, which has been, and just want to clarify the one high risk catchment area you're talking about in there. Is it the Lindis?
I believe so, but I would need to look at it in more detail just to confirm that.
Okay. And the reason I do say that is sometimes just understanding our alignment with the community, which I think is, and I may be wrong on this, but I think it's applied several times for eco funding or loop and control, and yet hasn't been able to I don't think they've been successful, or were they successful last time?
I believe they were successful last year.
Oh, great. And
I
this
believe
year,
so.
Oh.
Last, not the one round just been, but the one before.
I'll
I
check
think.
that. Yeah, okay, I didn't think they had been, so that's fine, but, and apologies if I've got that wrong. I'm just wondering who the stakeholders are that you would be developing a plan with in that area. And what the end result for that would be.
So we've already developed a Russell Lupin strategy where we worked with the communities to develop that, and then we would work with whoever is a relevant stakeholder in those areas to progress the actions within that strategy.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we've already done that engagement with the community, so with LINZ and with the community groups in those areas and with NZTA. And so then there's actions within that strategy which we need to progress, which is what that KPI is.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's one of the frustrating things is that it still continues to be a site of high tourism viewing as if it's a good thing, and how we can actually be messaging that that isn't a good thing. As beautiful it may seem to some, and it's a bit like having the wallaby marked up on a Waimate turnoff as if it's a good thing, and sometimes we should be trying to message these things better, maybe.
Yeah, and we can do some work on around highlighting that it's a problem through our comms team. So, and we do work with them really closely to ensure we're trying to get that message across.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Ellen?
Oh, thanks. Look, could you tell me some more about community rabbit programs? Because I really don't know about those, about how they work, our role with those, how they're established, what changes are happening.
Yes, I can. That's slightly out of scope of this paper. So we could bring, if you'd like, we could bring back another paper which delves into the community rabbit programs so that you get the full information. The people who run those programs aren't here today with the detail, but Murray and I could give a high level overview.
A high level overview would be fine, and I'd be happy to receive written material.
Okay.
Just emailed. It doesn't need to be a whole.
So would you rather that than?
Oh no, a high level overview would
Okay.
be good too.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
thanks.
So we have got community-led rabbit programs that we are supporting across the region. So those were developed in, I think, either 2020 or 2021. They were created because they were identified as areas where there were rabbit problems, not the only problems, but really high priority areas that we wanted to go in and support landowners to understand that there is a problem and what they could do about it. So those programs are set up for areas where they're not rural areas, they're smallish sites where control work is often difficult because there's small children, cats, dogs, pets that cause a barrier, and it's different control methods that are usually used in those areas than in rural settings where you have a farmer who knows all about pest control and can do that, whereas in some of those more urban areas, that's a more difficult thing for people to do because they're working and potentially haven't come across rabbits before in their life. So we've been working with those communities to support them and give them information around what they could do to reduce their rabbit populations and coordinate together. So the key part of these projects is that when they're looking at doing a poison job or a shooting operation, that they're working in a coordinated fashion to get good outcomes in reducing rabbit population numbers. So we originally we work in the community-led areas. We work with people who are willing and keen to be involved, and for those people who don't involve themselves in our programs, they go down a compliance route, and we work with them from a compliance point of view. This is more of
Oh,
an advocacy.
Please go on mute, Lloyd.
So advocacy point of view rather than straight into a compliance. And we've found some really interesting results as we've done this work, and we continue to evolve those programs as well. Where it's really important to have the first thing we would encourage is that they put rabbit fencing in place so that then their control is easier to do on their own properties, but it also reduces impacts on their neighbours. So they are all still the existing rabbit areas that we highlighted in 2021, I believe. But I can get more information and provide that written. And so we're looking at the moment around what kind of exit strategies we can employ in those areas, because they're quite resource heavy. And before we move into another area, we would like to ensure that those areas are well under control, and we see really good outcomes there before we move in and support another area.
So, thank you. So does that mean at the moment there isn't provision for establishment of more community rabbit programs?
At the moment, there is not, but we will work on that exit strategy, and then when we've got that in place, we will then look at what other areas we can support, and whether that's for rabbits or a different pest. We'll analyse all of that throughout this next financial year and incorporate something into our next operational plan around what we're looking to achieve.
Okay, no, thank you. That's very helpful.
Welcome.
That's a really interesting point, and Libby, page 48, where it says the number of community programs is 5. And Libby, you're saying, well, it's actually, we've got 5 and it's going to start 5 until we actually exit. Whereas certainly my perception when it was first kicked off, those numbers, was that there was a growth element in it. Like, I think historically it was 2, and then we increased it to 5. So it's gone from 2 to 5 with growth, and now we're capped at 5 until we can exit. Certainly my view, and maybe, it's not necessarily the view of the committee, is that, that's something to be looked at. We do need to be able to, if that formula works, we need to be able to grow it and replicate it. And as you say, how we exit and manage that risk. So gains are sustainable. Needs to be worked through. So, is there any questions from councillors on that? Anyway, I open it up to councillors for any questions you wish. Councillor Goodson.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you for bearing with us on questions in detail on rabbits. But yeah, it does say that there's 5 programs there, and that's what we're working towards. And we're hearing that we need to retain the same 5 that we have been working with. These things don't happen overnight, that we're going to get on top of hotspot, urban rabbit, often urban or peri-urban rabbit problems. So I guess the question would be, we're looking at an exit strategy, but is it realistic to think that that might be in the short term, they're actually quite significant issues that probably would, or do you need the data to be able to answer that? Sorry.
I think I can answer that without the data, but it's complex, and I think whatever our exit strategy is, that those 5 areas will still need ongoing support in some way, shape or form to ensure we retain the gains that we have made with those communities. And there might be some extra support that's needed to specific landowners where there's even more hotspots in a hotspot. So whatever we can bring back what we think our exit strategy would look like, and we'll bring a paper on that because that's important. And that paper can also then inform, maybe we started with too many, maybe, I don't know what the answer is without doing the analysis, but maybe we start with 1, do it really well, and then we move to the next one. And this work's been really important in understanding how much resource time, not just from ORC, but from the community, is required to achieve outcomes to reduce rabbit populations. So, because it is a complex issue that's been around for 150 years. So, I'm not sure exactly what the answers are, but the exit strategy will help us understand what we continue on with and where we might want to go next, because maybe we've done as much as we can in those areas and need to move somewhere else, because there's lots of hotspots, as we know.
Yeah, Libby, just continuing that conversation, you know, I wonder, in fact, is that we identify for these communities that are managing rabbits that we get some clarity about exactly what phase they're in. Are they in the entry phase? Are they in the implementation phase? Are they in the exit phase? And around that, you know, one can manage resource. And so out of that, you know, maybe a goal would have to change. You know, the goal might be to have 2 in entry, 2 new ones, and you know, and all that. So, you know, it's just growing pains in terms of that whole process. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Kevin. I'm not sure if. Okay, I was going to go to Kevin on Wallabies actually, but Tim.
Wallabies is what I was going to talk about actually.
Okay.
Perhaps we can leave it to Kevin if he wants. He's
No,
closer-
go
closer to
Tim,
them
because
than
I'm
we
trying
are.
to take my notes from the last paper back into this paper. I forgot to do
Can I
it.
ask
So, just the question that I have, is a figure
Wallabies?
sticks in my head from last.
Excuse me, Tim. Can I just pause you there? Just hold that and flesh out that point. Yeah. So Gary wants to ask a question about rabbits. So
Okay.
if
Sorry,
anybody's
Tom,
got any
that's
comments
good.
on rabbits, please ask them.
While we were just on that, I suppose my question and concern around this was that we have changed quite substantially from what the ORC did with rabbits 10 years ago versus what we're currently doing. And we're now quite focused on 5, where our plan says 5 community-led type projects. And a lot of resource goes into that. And then I suppose it does concern me a wee bit that it isn't an evolving model of 5, 5, 5, say every year or 2 years.
Yeah.
You'd like to think that there was a big upfront effort of resource, and then it tapers off as that group is really undertaking the bulk of its work. And you're like, what you'd hope what is being put in place is ongoing longevity and rabbit control for that group. And so I suppose my question is a very high level and broad one around, is this direction working, do you believe, in just focusing on a very few specific sites when we know that this problem is a big problem in a lot of areas, and the hotspots will generally always be hotspots?
So just to clarify, not all of our resources going into these 5, so we are also doing work in the rural rabbit space as well, and it's included in one of our KPIs where we look at doing rabbit inspections outside of the community program. So we are spreading ourselves across the region and looking at those hotspots that are outside of the 5 that are listed in here. So we do provide support. It's just not as detailed and intense support as what we do in those 5 areas. So I think with the resourcing that we've got a good program that we can achieve. And I absolutely, when these programs were started, I thought the same, that we'd have 5 and we could move and change. But as we've gone, because it's a new thing, we've learned that they do need more support than we originally thought that they would need to get the really good outcomes. But I do believe that it is working as well as it can be. And we will follow through with compliance in areas where we can, where they're eligible and where they're not coming on board with being engaged. So I think this program is really good, and it's a way that we're wanting to work across all of our pests, so not just for rabbits. So when, instead of going and doing an inspection just randomly in the middle of nowhere, we're going to be strategic in how we do that. So we're working with landowners together in every pest. It's a really good learning for the way that we need to work in all of the biosecurity work that we do, because you get better outcomes when people work together and they coordinate. So does that answer your question?
I think so. I guess what I'm looking for is assurance that while we have some focus in some concentrated areas, and we've got a limited pool of resource within staff and the organisation. So previously you had that limited resource across the entire region, reacting to the hotspots and
Yeah.
undertaking enforcement action or whatever where needed. And now we still have that. And I suppose while the 5 focus areas is great, are we dropping the ball on the rest of it? That's is there any risk of dropping the ball on the rest of it because we're focusing there? That's my question.
So at the moment, no, we're not dropping the ball, but we need to keep an eye on a whole range of different things around like climate change and ensure that we are on top of that as we go. Murray's organising for some rabbit proneness modelling to be completed in the next financial year, which will then help us understand more specifically around because that information was created in the 80s, early 90s. So updating that so that we know where are the areas that are prone to rabbits so that we can focus on those if they need to be focused on. That's not saying, so that's saying the proneness mapping will say these areas are prone to rabbits, but that doesn't mean that they're there right now. They might be in 5 years, they might come back to there because if the control doesn't keep up, then we need to keep an eye on those areas. It's important to do that. So yeah, at the moment we're not dropping the ball on our other rabbit work, but we need to keep an eye on that and ensure that we are on top of any hotspots that pop up because we know how fast they spread.
Okay, right, yeah, no, thank
Can
you.
I just add to that, to Libby and correct me if I'm wrong, there's money in next year's budget to actually have a review of the effectiveness of our pest plan implementation. So to actually have a look and say, well, is what we put in the plan and what we're there for implementing effective? So there's some information coming back to council to effectively address the question you're asking and to inform future approaches. That's right.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and that will look at all of our objectives in our PMP. We'll start that next year and ensure that we're on track to meet those. And for rabbits, our objective is sustained control. So it's not to remove them all from the region. Our objective is sustained control. So that review can help us understand whether we're on track meeting that and help inform the questions that you're asking.
Cool, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Gary. It seems to me that for this program to be successful, the community segment rabbit program, that it does need to be scalable. So my question to you, Libby and Murray, is do we have a feel or an understanding of how many potential community hotspots there are that may require a community site program? Yeah.
We probably need to do a little bit more work around that. There was work done originally when programs were started, and those 5 programs were selected, and we may have started with less than 5, but we've built up to the 5. And our staff continually are out there doing surveillance and monitoring and inspections across the region, so they have the best idea around where those hotspots are and the feedback we get from communities as well. So, and just bearing in mind the community program is for the peri-urban and urban areas. It's not.
No, I understand that, and I've attended the Lake Hayes and one in Albert Town, and the identification of those groups, as I understood, not only is there a rabbit problem, but is there a community that's available, prepared to actually do something about it, where the OSS, and I think there was another one in Clyde. And so I think that's a relevant question, is there 100 communities of which some aren't ready to do anything about it, or is there 20? Certainly in terms of Gary's question, I suspect that that's sort of key. Are we making, what does that pathway to success look like? Yeah. You don't have to answer that now, but I look forward to getting a better feel about that as a councillor. Thank you. Are we done on rabbits for the moment?
Happy to move the report, the recommendation.
Yeah.
There's other pests that you might.
Yeah. Tim, is it time to go to you, Tim, on wallabies?
Actually, I said wallabies, but I was thinking about rabbits as well. As well.
They look similar.
I know they look a bit different. Yeah, but no, the question I did have was just around the flexibility of the plan and the ability for it to be reactive. Because I think just from last week, there's a figure, I think of about 1.2 or $1.4 million for wallaby control. I can't remember what meeting we were in. But when we looked at the number of wallabies that had been killed, which was a statistic that came out, it was an incredibly expensive kill rate. So we've got a real rabbit problem at the moment. And we've got a plan now for 24 to 25. Is it set in concrete? Is it flexible to change? I mean, can we re-emphasise it?
Absolutely, we can re-emphasise it. We can bring it back if there's something that pops up in our region that we need to react to. We would potentially drop something in our operational plan to be able to react to that, depending on its priority. And so for wallabies and wild conifers, we received significant funding from central government to be able to deliver those programs. So those are set in stone. We can't transfer that budget into the likes of rabbit control because that's a specific program that MPI are funding. So I think
that's a decent answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to go next?
It's
and then Michael.
It's very difficult to look at the cost per animal to destroy. And if we do look at predator free and the funding models that they have of about $8.5 million that they have had from government. So only the government money, not including money that they've had from Juanita and all their partners, and they've killed 100,000 possums, rats, and bits and pieces. So that's actually $100. It's been $100 an animal to do that. And it'll be very interesting to see the actual cost of getting that last possum on the peninsula, because if you actually look at that, to get that last one when they want complete eradication, that's exceptionally will be exceptionally expensive. But the wallaby program is an eradication program because it's an invasive pest that's come from another area, and it's led by a national program to ensure that it's eradicated from this area progressively. It's progressively removed from a buffer zone in the Canterbury region, and then within the containment zone, it is then progressively eradicated from there. So you're on this area, and if you look at I think it was about 1.2 million hectares that were actually covered in hunting those wallaby. It's probably the value for money seems to be getting better and better. And hopefully we don't shoot any more than that, and hopefully we are getting on top of them, because if you want a real pest, the next drive you come up our way, we'll go show you where some good wallaby country is, and where they are thriving and when they are causing their absolute destruction. So, there is a question. There is a question, and on page 18, and going back, and I would have said on the day, but going back to the report that we had from Gavin and the team about tracking wallabies, and page 18 tells us the KPIs that we're going to so classify all sightings of wallabies, determine the appropriate control, and determine the appropriate control action when confirmed. So
that's 18
page 18 of 88. Yep.
18 of 88.
Yeah, so all sightings are classified to determine credibility within 3 working days, and if a prisoner is confirmed, a decision on the appropriate control action is decided within a further 2 working days. So that's in fact 5 working days when we know with the Judas wallaby trial that we're doing that these little critters can move 20, 30, 40 kilometres a day. So I just wonder if that KPI, I know that is probably the outer end of it, because I just wonder, I hope that's not determining the pace that we do some of this stuff at, Libby.
Absolutely.
And I know it's not, but I just want that confirmed to everyone, because
we respond to those as soon as possible. So as soon as they come in, Gavin's on top of that and gets that out to our contractors to respond to. So that's the minimum that we need to respond to that in.
Yeah. So the less, I presume you're giving rating that the credibility of the phone call, I've seen something that could be a wallaby. It was about that big. It might have been a big rabbit. I'm not sure. And it's in the middle of George Street. So you're probably saying, well, if I get to that within 3 days.
Hop like a wallaby.
Well, you know what I'm saying, like, because that timeframe we know from the movements of wallabies that we've got to react.
Yeah. There are three classifications. Is unreliable. There's reliable but unconfirmed, and then there's confirmed.
Right.
So Gavin, our wallaby lead, will make sure that they're classified properly.
Yep.
And we would only invest going after the confirmed ones.
Excellent.
Because of just the cost of things.
Yep.
So
Okay.
and then we'd get control action declared on those confirmed sightings.
Thank you. Good.
So there's two Gavins. It's not, you're not going up to the general manager to get the wallabies.
No. The general manager of wallabies we're talking about.
Thank you. Kate, did you?
It's for a question, and it's just when I look at the recommendations, I'm going to leave shortly, so I won't move it myself. But given what you said, appreciate that we look at review later on. The large issue of deer, since we're writing to the minister and filing this, would it be appropriate or inappropriate to add a line, and we would welcome early advance warning if a national strategy for deer or other pests were being considered, given that we've heard there's some quantum of issues? Would you mind that being added in?
We can add that into the cover letter when we submit the plan.
Yeah.
It doesn't need a resolution.
No, that's okay. I just think it's probably warranted at the state that we're hearing about it.
With councillors indulgence, I wonder if it's more about highlighting the impact that we have been informed that deer are currently having, as opposed to waiting for policies. If we could highlight the known, sorry,
Well, I think we'll do
you know what I'm
both.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of highlighting what we've just heard through our communication process on the long-term plan, and encouraging them to give any advance warning of any thinking at a national level to help inform our planning. We can capture that in the sort of cover letter.
Thank you.
Or we can help them structure it.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Kate. Are there any other questions?
On the total report?
Yeah.
Yep, page 19, just a question around, I should have transferred these last night instead of trying to do it right then. This is around wild and conifers. You undertake assessments of wild and conifers as guided by the regional wild and conifer strategy. So how could you just tell me how that works and when those happen? So at what stage are you doing that?
Which one are you talking about?
So that's wild and conifers 3.31 on page 19. The top one, undertake assessments of wild and conifers.
So that's target with the target 50.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
So that's just what we will do normally. We will as part of the Wild and Conifer National Program, Gavin Newdy has got work that we're already undertaking within the MUs that have got funding, and we're doing wilding control in those areas. So this is outside of that, and that's
outside of that.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so
right,
this is
cool.
for our biosecurity officers to go and undertake assessments of where there are wild and conifers that might be breaching some of our rules, or where they're causing where there's seed sources that we can look at outside the program.
Yep. So it's a second level. Yeah. Good as go. So that rules out my next question, because I was going to say when do you hand it back, but that's right. No, perfect. Thank you.
We good, Kevin?
Yep. That's good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Andrew?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a general question about the process, and clearly if the minister's not happy about a particular matter, he or she won't sign it off. I don't even know who the Minister of Biosecurity is, but
Andrew Hogarth.
Andrew Hogarth, thank you. I assume that Libby and Murray and co, you've had some conversations along the lines with his staff, Ministry of Biosecurity staff, that there's been no changes since the coalition have come into power, so to speak, because there's been a lot of legislative changes. So there's no surprises or anything that we're not aware of at this point. I assume that background work's already been done by somebody here.
I haven't talked to Biosecurity New Zealand staff specifically about our operational plan, but as far as I'm aware, there are no changes coming. The Biosecurity Act is supposed to be under review, but I believe that has been pushed out with the changes that have been made at MPI. There may be some changes to the national policy direction, but there's no detail around that yet, so I don't think it would affect this round of our plan.
So that here and now, there's no changes at this point. Good, cool, thank you.
And just to add on to that, is that the operational plan has to be consistent with our regional pest management plan. And that's the only potential, or what the leading potential way that the minister could ask for a change if it's inconsistent. But this plan is consistent.
Awesome, thank you.
Cool. No further questions? We did have a mover, but he's moved.
Just before we, oh, sorry, Andrew, could we just have a, even whether you want to adjourn, just to construct that fifth?
It doesn't need, it doesn't need a,
You're quite comfortable? Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
and we'll circulate a copy so you can see what was included.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, there's 4 recommendations, all on page 488. One notes the report. The second recommends the council to approve, authorises the city to create minor areas. The third one, to send a copy to the Minister of Biosecurity. And the fourth one, notes the staff will report back to council on any response from the Minister. Cool, so we've got a mover.
Second.
We've got a seconder. Is there any discussion or debate about those recommendations?
Look, I would just say, acknowledge Libby, Murray and the team. This operational plan essentially gives effect to the pest management plan. And, you know, it's been updated, taking into consideration some of the learnings over the last 12 months or so. So, yeah, thanks for the work. Cheers.
Cool. Definitely. Thank you very much for your work. So I'll put that motion.
Lloyd just made a note in terms of that cover letter that pigs be included, which we'll just review through the submissions.
Good. So I'm going to put that motion. Those for?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll move now to a second and final report of this committee meeting. Okay, this is about welcome. This is about the biosecurity compliance and enforcement policy by Libby, by Murray, and by Casey. Look, I do apologise. Your first name is?
Casey.
Kathy. I do apologise.
Casey.
Oh, Casey.
Yep, just the letters.
Cool. Casey. And endorsed by Gavin. The purpose of this report seeks to approve an updated version of the biosecurity compliance and enforcement policy that applies to the OSC pest management plan and the statutory requirements of the Biosecurity Act. The updated policy sets out the approach and principles by which the OLC Council promotes and undertakes compliance and enforcement under the Regional Pest Management Plan and the Act. This policy outlines how the compliance and enforcement is managed to ensure a consistent and integrated approach. So, Libby, Murray, KC, what have I missed in terms of an introduction?
Nothing, thank you. We'll just take the paper as read and answer any questions. This is just an update on the previous one that was developed in 2021. So relatively minor.
Yeah, and if we go to page 72 of 88, we can see the updates there. Is it fair to say they where would you, what word would you use in terms of the updates? Minor? Minor.
Yes.
Okay. How do you spell offence? Is it an S in it or a C in it?
What did you say? Did you say offence?
Offence.
It would be a
spelling mistake. You put your spell check
It
through.
would be an offence to put an S in it.
Yeah.
We will check that.
Deep dived.
Sorry, it just jumped out. Kevin,
page 60, so we've just got a couple of questions there. Page 60 is, are there no financial costs in adopting the policy? The policy does outline costs recovery for persistent non-compliance. So around a notice of direction, when we give a notice of direction and that is not carried out, we then have, I believe we then have the power to put a contractor in to do that job. So we can then claim against the offender. But does that also allow us to charge for our time associated with that non-compliance?
Yes, it does.
Oh, good, thank you. Excellent. And if I could just have one more, it's another financial one.
yeah,
On page 87. An easier, quicker way to get to page 87. Yeah, this is around recovery of default work costs, where we can put a lien on a property, but it actually, and I'm just, so under the Rating Act, if you don't pay your rates, you can actually get the bank to pay them if there's a mortgage. So have we got the same power under this act?
The Biosecurity Act is quite specific in the lien that it puts on the property. And so I'm not familiar with the other powers, but I did meet with Janet Ashcroft Legal Counsel on the specific wording included in here and the power of the lien. So that my understanding is that what needs to be done, that you cannot sell or refinance the property title without dealing with the lien first.
So there's no,
That's-
the bank process is specific to the Rating Act, different,
Yeah.
different
It
process
is-
under the Biosecurity
Yeah.
Act.
It's very specific to the Biosecurity Act and how it's worded and the powers that it has.
Right, so within that act, does that allow us to notify the mortgage holder or the bank, the bank or the mortgage holder?
I'd have to check on that one.
Because if you refinance, it would be,
We can come back to you on that and provide an answer.
yeah, I just from my own experience, when I didn't pay when we still were doing rabbit collection, rabbit shooting, I never paid my rates because I disputed the rabbit portion. And it was a very amicable dispute with the ORC, and they realised that they had charged me incorrectly. But what they had done in the interim was went to my bank and said, you need to pay this, because I had a mortgage at the time. So, and that was particularly around a rabbit function as opposed to a rate function. So, yeah, all I'm
And I
saying.
just would add that the lien is the very last, it's the
Yeah,
final
appreciate
step.
that,
So we
yeah.
would do the invoicing and we would do all in there. And the act is quite liberal in its recovery of costs, and there's additional charges that can be added.
Yep.
So it is quite liberal, and we would be in contact with the landowner throughout that part. Lots of warning before we, hopefully, long before we get here, about the potential and costs that would,
Yeah.
and the
yeah.
implications of what non-compliance would.
Notifying
to-
his bank would speed things up, I think.
Yeah, true.
thank you.
Any other confessions?
No. I was happy to help.
Yes, you need on the
They've done it
table.
wrong.
Are we good, everybody?
Yeah.
Page 84 of 88, it talks about an accelerated compliance process. And previously there's two flow charts. There's two flow charts. I'm not quite sure why there's two flow charts.
There.
On page
the
79
reason
and
is
80.
one is a slightly updated version of the other.
So
Yeah, the comparison document.
That's just showing the change from the last compliance policy to the new one.
okay,
You can't
Okay.
do track changes on,
okay.
it's an insert. That's
So my question is, this is an updated document. Previously, a notice of direction process and compliance for rabbits had some gaps in it. Are we confident this is, all those gaps are filled? How is the current notice of direction process in compliance in prosecution. Because if a notice of direction is not held, prosecution can potentially follow. For example, if do we currently have any notice of directions? How is that process going?
We do have active notices of direction at the moment,
Okay.
and they when we've re-inspected those that have been issued, they have been compliant, or we've been able to grant them an extension because they're already undertaking some work on their way to being compliant.
Yes.
So at this point, we aren't in a position to be undertaking default work or prosecutions right now.
Yes.
So the notice of direction process is working well.
It's working well.
Yes.
Thank you. And has any of it led to the insertion of contractors or prosecution?
Not at this point.
Not at this point, but you're confident that if that needed to be a next step, that the dots are here and the T's are crossed?
Yes, we will be ready to undertake default work if we need to.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions, anybody? If not, I'm going to go back to the recommendations. Okay, so the recommendation is that the Environmental Implementation Committee recommends that the Council approves and adopts the revised biosecurity compliance and enforcement policy, notes that the policy will be reviewed again in March 2027. Do we have a mover for that recommendation?
Sure.
The mover, Councillor Allen, Councillor Kevin. Is there any discussion around that? Any debate around those recommendations? If not, I would invite Alan. Do you have any comments to make?
Don't feel I need to say anything at this stage. Thank you for the work on it.
Cool. Okay, no further ado, I'm going to put that motion. Those for? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, staff, for all your work. Before we all disappear, I'm going to do the carry care for closing a meeting. I should have practiced this, shouldn't I, before Kaita Te Ranga Marae Kei Ranga Ina Iwi Aotearoa. Let's let peace reign on all people of the world. Thank you very much. We close today's meeting of the Implementation Committee.